Hi, folks. Buckle up. This is going to be a little bit of a talking head video, but without the talking head. Where to begin? A lot of you guys have probably seen this. Gaijin posted this article yesterday. They put it up on their website. They put a link to it in the War Thunder launcher, titled How Progression and Economy is Built in Free-to-Play Games, and War Thunder in particular, dated yesterday. And it is authored by the creative director at Gaijin, whose name I'm going to mispronounce, is Kirill Udintsev. So, wow. This article comes off to me as tone deaf to the point of being like almost offensive. Did somebody proofread this? I'm sure this was translated into English before it was published. Like, more than one person had to look at this, proofread it, vet these statements through some PR people or whatever else. There's some collective decision making that went into publishing this. Now, I'm gonna run through this and give you some commentary on what I think are the real key points. And for those who might be new to the channel and don't know me, or if you happen to wander into this, without seeing some of my other previous videos where I talk about my background, in addition to being a gamer, I am a politician. In addition to being a gamer, I have a background in economics and I have a business degree. I am a member of the American Economics Association. I'm a subscriber and frequent reader to and of multiple peer-reviewed economics journals because I'm a nerd. That's the sort of stuff that I do. I served 5 terms in mid-level elected office here in the United States, in a competitive swing district, and the details of that aren't important. But the reason I mention it for context with this article is going to become important once I get down towards the bottom. So that's the angle I'm coming at this from. I've also been playing War Thunder since the very beginning. I joined it, back in like the beginning of 2013, I think, like way back at the beginning, either in the late alpha or the very early beta. Early enough that, I've got some of those, and I've got reviews up. I've got some of those like gift vehicles that were only given out to people who've been there from the start. So I've got a perspective on this that's like really niche, I'm going to say. Anyway, so it says, player progression is essential. You can't give a player everything at once. And it talks a little bit here about like why they have a tech tree. This statement isn't really telling anyone anything they don't already know. Like, having progression trees, a sense of progression and like tech trees, has been a universal element of video games since like the early 1980s in some cases. Like Donkey Kong had a score. There was progression from one stage to the next, right? And then you get into like PC games, some of the early RPGs that were on home computers, like the Ultima series and the old Gold Box D&D games that sort of took their systems from like tabletop pen and paper RPGs. You had a player level that you went up, and you got more abilities and everything, and you got your characters got better as you progress. Like the idea of a progression system is not new. This reads like they think they invented the idea of player progression, or that the rest of us reading this are too stupid to understand that player progression is a universal thing. Almost every game that is released these days, except for like maybe some, Mario Sonic platformers, almost every game that is released these days has some form of progression in it. Now, it also says here, and this is where we get into some of the free-to-play game paradigm issues. It says, in addition, progression serves as one of the basics of how a game makes money. Basically, players pay for acceleration of progression. This is true, but it does not have to be true. this can be one of the ways that a game makes money, it does not have to be the only way that a game makes money. And I'll give some specific examples of that in a minute or two. The fundamental difference between paid games and, this was an interesting phrase here, fair play free-to-play games. Do they think there's a distinction between fair play and unfair play free-to-play games? Like video slots that are rigged against you? Like, what do they think the distinction is here? Anyway, the difference is that you don't have to pay to play free games, well, obviously, and most players don't actually pay. Now, this is where we get this next statement, massive cognitive dissonance here, and this got me kind of upset. Most War Thunder players, about 80%, have never paid a dime into the game whilst playing for months or years. Many of these players who have paid for something in the game don't pay every month and sometimes not every year either. Nevertheless, all of the maintenance, we got to pay to keep it going. 80% of players have never paid a dime into the game. Okay, so there's no evidence that that number is accurate, but I'm going to take everything that they're saying in this article at face value. All right, I'm not going to challenge that number because it's irrelevant. Here's the key. Have never paid a dime into the game whilst playing for months or years. And most players who have paid don't pay very frequently. You got to ask the question, out of that 80% who they're saying have played the game for months or years and have never paid, how many did not ever pay for anything because they got disenfranchised by how abusive the in-game research system and Silver Lion's economy is? They got ground out and quit before they were invested, like, not financially invested, before they were invested in terms of their entertainment in the game. Before they were, like, hooked on it, so to speak. They quit before they had the opportunity to ever monetize their participation in the game. And thus, they add to an 80% figure in a soundbite like this. So it makes it look like those players were just like freeloading bums who came along and mooched off this free-to-play game without ever paying into it. Well, you don't know if they would have paid into it later because you chased them away after only maybe a couple of months. And this statement also doesn't take into account levels of player activity. There were periods, I mentioned I've been playing War Thunder since the beginning. I haven't been playing like 2 hours a day for 10 years. There have been periods of time in my own history with War Thunder where I would log in for a day just to keep, the daily login booster going, but I wouldn't actually play any matches. So my level of participation during, potentially months that I was a player of the game ostensibly, my level of participation during those periods of times might have been very low. So, this isn't even considering a lot of players. And actually, before I get sidetracked, this is a point I really want to hit home. And I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about this one thing, but this is really important as a concept I think that they've missed, and it's really critical here. A few months ago, back in December, when War Thunder had its 10th anniversary, I published like an hour-long video talking about my history with War Thunder, and I'll put a link in the description if you're curious. My history with War Thunder, going up through the progression trees back under the old system, getting up to rank 20 aircraft and all that stuff, getting my first jet fighter. Here's the thing. That progression did not happen like overnight. That took time, right? And the amount of time that I put into some of those higher tiered vehicles, specifically I'm thinking the Yak 15P. Once I got it, I was so distraught at how badly it sucked. I felt like I had wasted all that time, and I basically quit the game for a while. So they're talking about people who, and I was still a free-to-play, still a free-to-play player. Sorry, the tongue twister. At that point, I had never, by the time I got like that first jet fighter, I had never paid a dime into War Thunder. My reasons for that are irrelevant. Basically, I just didn't want to pay money into a game. I wasn't sure if it was still going to be around in a year. But the factors that they're considering here don't include how many players have maybe gotten to a certain point, become distraught about one thing or another. Maybe they got like the P-51 and they sit back and think, wow, it just took me however many months to get this P-51. I'm never going to make it to that F-16. This is pointless. Why bother? So they're out after a couple of months. They're done and they don't come back. So Gaijin misses the opportunity for a good chunk of those players. And I'm willing to bet it's a large number. They miss the opportunity for those players to maybe buy a premium account later on, or pick up a premium vehicle, or some other, get a battle pass season, or any of the other 100 ways that there are for people to monetize in to the game. So this is a critical failing of understanding on their part, that they mention this as they've mentioned it without some of that other context, because they're not considering why players may stay or leave, or pay or not pay. Anyway, in any game, getting back to the article here, in any game, players play only when they have fun. Well, duh. But in a free-to-play game, players only pay if the game really entertains them. Well, that's obvious. The player's already playing, already having fun, and pays if they want to support the game or try something new, which is, at the same time, not necessary to enjoy the game. Otherwise, they would just quit playing and not pay at all. Well, guess how many people have done this because of how abusive these issues are and how it's all unresolved. Anyway, so they kind of, again, this is nonsensical fluff. They're just saying things that are obvious. If I had wheels, I'd be a wagon. Hence the unobvious conclusion: the less you have to pay to play the game, the more differently priced paid options it should have, so that those who can afford it can spend more, and those who can't or don't want to can play for free and have fun. Okay, so they were so close to getting it. They're so close to getting it with part of this here. The less you have to pay to play the game, the more differently priced paid options it should have. This is where this should have stopped without the second clause. Like, this comma should have been a period. If they had stopped there and just like paused and reflected on that thought, they could have gotten so much further ahead. All right. In a game like War Thunder that is free to play, and this is where Tim with a business degree comes in, and this is where Tim with my economics background comes in. In a game that is free to play, the game has to make money somehow, right? And I want it to. I've covered this topic a couple of times before. I want War Thunder to make money for Gaijin. It's an amazing game, and I want amazing things to be profitable for a company to produce. And I don't mind paying in a little bit myself. I pay for a premium account, and I have for a couple of years, not the whole 10 years, but I don't mind pitching in a few bucks, and I want the game to make money for them. And I want to be really clear about that. I mean, I'm on the side of the players because I'm a player myself, even though, I'm just a guy who makes YouTube videos, but I still play the game, and I don't want it to suck, Anyway, in a game like War Thunder that is free to play, they have to make money off of it somehow. And if there's only one way for players to monetize in to the game, very few will choose to do that. For example, my chosen method is having a premium account, and I do that primarily for the bonus to the research points. I don't usually care about the battle pass, because I don't really, there are periods of time where I don't have the free time. I'm a guy in my early 40s. I don't always have the amount of free time to grind out the battle pass rewards. So I don't ever monetize in to the battle pass system. All right. And that's fine. So if the only way that the game had to monetize in was the battle pass system, War Thunder and Gaijin wouldn't make a dime off of me. I don't monetize in that way. However, if the only way for someone to monetize into the game was the premium account, then all of those people who want the battle pass rewards and have the time to grind for it or whatever, they're not gonna pay the battle pass bonus to get the head start on that. So they are correct, and this is correct that that they should have different ways for people to support the game. And there are currently tons of them. Kind of. The majority of ways that people can monetize in are all locked behind golden eagles. Excuse me there. The majority of ways that people can monetize into the game are locked behind golden eagles. The other primary way is, I think on the web store, you can still directly buy a premium account, and you can buy pack vehicles and stuff. But generally speaking, they monetize things by buying GEs. You can spend GEs to get Silver Lions. You can do it to speed up research points. And by the way, the conversion rate on GEs to research points is very poor. So that's something I never choose to do. But, they are correct to have a lot of different ways that someone can monetize in. Now, here's the problem. So that those who can afford it can spend more, and those who can't or don't want to can play for free and have fun. So that we can squeeze the whales, and so that those who don't want to pay, don't have to. But the can play and have fun, like that's a slap. Because as we talked about a minute ago, a lot of these people are not having fun, and they are leaving the game because of how abusive the player economy is. And they spilled the beans right here. They gave the game away. They're basically telling you right there that they want to just squeeze the whales even harder. That's bad. Don't do that. Slap on the wrist. Don't do that. Bad snail. Okay? One of my friends, and I'm not going to call him out, but he'll probably see this and know who he is. One of my friends in real life who I have brought into the game is definitely a whale. He mentioned to me once in a conversation that he's probably spent like $2,000 on War Thunder over the last few years. He loves it. He's hooked. I see him online all the time, almost every freaking day. He loves it. He's real big into War Thunder, and he has spent a significant amount of money on the game. So Gaijin has made a couple grand off of my buddy. How much have they lost from other players, from a larger number of other players that they have driven away who can't necessarily afford to spend $2,000 on the game to get what my buddy has, but maybe they would have spent $50 if the economic system wasn't so abusive and the research wasn't so crippled. And they didn't keep crippling it every, couple of times a year, if they didn't keep making the economy more and more disadvantageous to players. This gets me upset. It's a concept from economics that game developers really often get wrong, in that they're squeezing the whales rather than trying to broaden the base. And that's a fundamentally flawed way to try and look at the monetization of a game like this. Anyway, moving on. They say, there are many progression and economy options in free-to-play games. None of them are... not all of them are suitable for our game, because War Thunder is about real combat vehicles which are not equal, differing in power and capabilities. Yep, if I had wheels, I'd be a wagon. To quickly and roughly summarize the general principles of economy and progression in our game. Now, here's where we get into some problems, and there's one of these in particular that I was really offended by. But, all right, vehicles should be unlocked gradually, from simpler and older to more complex and later. Yep, that's fine. The total time to get the first top vehicle should be balanced. Not too long, not too short, number of game hours. Full stop. I want to hear this guy tell us publicly how long he thinks that should be. the author of this article, what was his name there? Unitstev, their creative director for Gaijin. And I left this, I left 2 pieces of feedback for the snail in response to this. And this was the real critical one. It says, is that, I highlighted this one snippet, this one bullet point, and responded to it. I want him to tell us publicly how long he thinks it should take for a new player to get from rank 1 to rank 7. Not even like rank 8 with the air trees. All right? Like not even top tier. How long do they think it should take in terms of game hours to get from rank 1 to rank 7? Publish that number and then compare that to actual player experiences and see if they match. I'm willing to bet that they do not match. And if this number, again, I've got a number of friends, probably a dozen people, I have brought into War Thunder over the years that I know in real life or, through social media before I started making YouTube videos and stuff. The majority of them still play, and only like maybe 2 or 3 of them, however, have ever paid in. One of my buddies is definitely a whale. Another one does what I do. He pays for a premium account once a year, when it goes on sale, and that's really it. I think 1 or 2 of the others have maybe picked up a pack vehicle, but nothing heavy. But the point is, it's taken like a couple of those people literally years of time as an adult gamer who does not have 3 hours a day for one game, it has taken them years of calendar time to get up into like rank 6 and 7 with one tech tree. So I really want to know, and their creative director there, he opened this can of worms. They opened this door. I want to hear from Gaijin directly how long they think it's supposed to take. And I want to see some mathematical examples of what they think, what level of activity in the game is going to allow a player to reach that milestone. All right, let's say, and I'm just going to pull a number completely out of thin air. All right, I have been playing for 10 years, so I am not a good example. I got to the top tiers back under the old progression system. And it was entirely different than it is now. And I've just stayed on top of it since then. So I am not personally a good example. I have no idea how many game hours it takes an average player to get from bottom to top now. But let's say it takes 500 hours. I'm just pulling a number completely out of thin air. That could be really low. It could be really high. All right, 500 game hours. What do they have to do in that 500 game hours to get from the bottom to the top? All right, this is a problem because match results are not equalized. You can spend 500 game hours going out there and just sucking and getting your butt kicked all over the place, and you're not going to get anywhere. You can go out there and maybe you just have a natural talent for War Thunder. Maybe you find a couple of specific vehicles that you are a unicorn S-tier god with. And in those 500 hours, you are able to dramatically overperform the average players. Maybe you are a player who's really into, like, I don't know, the Panhard EBR, that French wheeled tank thing. All right, and that's what you really want to spend the majority of your time playing. Is this like one particular vehicle in the middle of the tech tree? Well, that's great, but that vehicle is going to be super inefficient if you are researching things that are way above it or way below it in the tech tree. So the rewards you're getting from a game hour are not normalized. So even if they had a completely realistic number for how long they think it should take, that's not going to work. It's an inherently flawed metric because the returns you get out of a given game hour they don't match. They're not even predictable. I mean, I've had afternoons where I'll go sink, 3 or 4 hours into War Thunder and I'm just crushing it. Grinding out Silver Lions and RP and I grind out like half of a top tier jet in one day because I'm just in the zone and I'm having a day of really good matches. And every time I fly out, I'm crushing 6 or 7 kills and carrying the team. And it's just a really good day. Maybe a week later, I settle in for an afternoon of War Thunder and I'm having a bad day. I go out and I'm struggling to get 1 or 2 kills per match. I'm getting shot down before I get a kill half of the time. I mean, that happens. Everyone who plays a game like this is going to have good days and bad days. The results are not predictable. All right, sorry. I spent a long time on that one thing, but it really offended me to see that. So I wanted to talk about it. The player should, at the beginning of the game row, while mastering the game, get new in-game equipment often enough. All right, so again, they're just talking about how they want like vehicle features to follow some kind of progression. I'm focusing on the air trees because that's just what I play most. Like, you should get an aircraft with the dipole search radar from World War II before you get an advanced pulse Doppler look down, shoot down BVR radar set. All right, yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. However, the existence of premium vehicles and the fact that you can buy your way into top tier and be completely overwhelmed by trying to operate top tier radar and missiles in like an F4S, kind of counters this because they're saying that the player should have this progression, but at the same time, they're allowing you to directly buy your way around the progression. So that's a paradox. They're contradicting themselves. All right, so the game has to earn money, otherwise it will be closed. Yes, that is true. I agree, and they should be able to make money off of it because it's a great game. In terms of the actual gameplay. And it must make money without a paywall so that you can play indefinitely without paying anything. And so if there's no deception that the game is free when in fact it's not. All right, so they're saying here that what they don't want to do is they don't want to do a bait and switch. And it should provide everyone the opportunity to play a multiplayer game with multiple modes and features. All right, so they're basically saying here, we still got to make money, but we don't want to do a bait and switch. Well, they're doing a bait and switch because of how damn hard it is to actually progress through the tech trees and just exist in the Silver Lions economy without paying into the game. So, they're saying there's no deception that the game is free when in fact it's not. Like, okay, that's fine. You technically, you can log into the game and participate in reserve tier matches every day without ever paying in. That's fine. No one's accusing them of a bait and switch with like the ability to log into the game. But the problem is that, whenever they put out a trailer, like any of the advertisements for War Thunder that you see on YouTube or ads on social media, they all highlight the high tier Cold War era military hardware. People who are getting exposed to War Thunder for the first time might see a trailer for the new patch, the La Royale, and think it's all about these high tier tanks and parachute bombs and jet fighters and all this stuff, not realizing that they might have to get into the game and play for literally years before they actually experience any of that stuff, or pay $70 to buy a premium. So, bait and switch, but not bait and switch. Moving on, progression and economy should, as far as possible, provide a variety of vehicles encountered in battle. Otherwise, it's just boring, as in there should not be too many farming vehicles, and especially when they are statistically stronger in battle. Otherwise, only the same popular vehicles will appear in battle. This bullet point is proof to me that whoever wrote this does not actually play the game. Dude, go into an ARB match anywhere around BR10. Like, no kidding. You're going to be fighting nothing but F5Cs, premium A10s, premium Su-25s, the occasional A5C out of the Chinese tree. Like, BR10 is like 80 or 90% premium vehicles. And it's like the same 5 premium vehicles. So what you're saying here should not be a thing. You have made a thing because of the way that you've monetized the game. You have made it so much more advantageous to play a premium vehicle as opposed to a tech tree vehicle. The rewards are just so bad in terms of RP and Silver Lions and everything. And the repair costs, the opportunity cost of using, an F100 are so high compared to, a premium equivalent that you've created this situation. There are a few spots in ground and air at different BRs, and I can only presume it's probably true for naval, but you've created these spots where you do not see a variety of vehicles. And there are too many farming vehicles, regardless of how statistically stronger they are. It's because the costs and rewards are so heavily skewed towards using those particular vehicles. Of course, people are going to use them more, even if they're not necessarily good performers. Like the F5C is my favorite example. There are a large number of aircraft in the matchmaking range of the F5C that outclass it and outperform it. All right. And, people can, it's subjective opinion. People can disagree with me, but I don't think the F5C is an overpowered vehicle. However, because the rewards from using it are so much better than comparable stuff at that level of the tech tree, that's why you see so much of it. It has nothing to do with it being overpowered. It's not a KA-50. There definitely are some premium vehicles that are overpowered. I think the Su-39 coming in the next patch is going to be an example of that. That thing is going to be a freaking beast in close air support, and American tanker players are going to freaking hate it because of how often, America and the Soviets go up against each other at top tier ground. But anyway, so they're saying that they want to avoid this situation, but their in-game economy has created this situation. Now, that's getting into a whole other topic about, is this even a valid concern, right? Saying that, there shouldn't be farming vehicles and all this stuff. That's fine, but I am of the opinion that, and this may be unpopular, that's okay. You can totally disagree with me. I'm, no judgments. I am of the opinion that it's okay if some vehicles are better than others. Like, that's fine, and it has to be fine. It needs to be okay that there are some vehicles that, if used in a certain way, will be better for farming. Not, speaking strictly out of the tech tree, not taking the existence of premium vehicles into account, right? It has to be okay in a game system that there will be some vehicles that are better for farming. That'll just always be the case. There's no way to completely equalize it. And even then, I don't think it necessarily should be equalized. There are vehicles that are not especially good in the game that I absolutely love to play. A perfect example are the PT-76 and some of the amphibious tanks that are based on like the PT-76's chassis and principles that are in the Soviet tech tree. I love those light amphibious tanks. I love them. They're super fun. But frankly, they kind of suck. They're not especially effective vehicles. They get destroyed very easily. They have a number of disadvantages, but I don't care. I play them because they're fun. And I should be able to play a fun vehicle without the economy punishing me because the costs and rewards are so bad that I am forced into playing something else at this BR if I actually want to break even and not lose money, quote, money, Silver Lions, by doing so. When I sit down for an afternoon of War Thunder where I tell myself in advance, I'm going to have fun today, I know that I am going to come out of that play session way behind on Silver Lions because the vehicles I'm going to be using probably don't have good modifiers. Stuff like the PT-76 or stuff like the B-29 and TU-4, which have outrageous repair costs, So they say that they want to avoid this situation, but they have created this situation through their mechanics. So either, I want to take this at face value, but like, I don't know, tell me you're incompetent without telling me that you're incompetent. So this is a problem. Moving on, in a game with so many vehicles and modes, it's impossible to manually adjust the in-game economy. No, it's not. They say it's important that it obeys specific rules, and manual changes would skew a vehicle's effectiveness, making some vehicles bad and others much better than average, and thus affecting their occurrence in battles. Okay, number one, it is absolutely not true that it is impossible to manually adjust the in-game economy. They do this all the time. And again, they talk about how, vehicles' effectiveness, making some things bad, others would be better than average. That is always going to be the case no matter what. Like, it needs to be okay that some vehicles are going to be a little bit more effective than others. You should balance this. This whole concern can be balanced with the matchmaker, not the economy. I'm going to say that again for emphasis. This whole concern, this whole bullet point, can be resolved with the matchmaker, not the economy. You can change this by tweaking battle rating, not repair costs and research costs, or income modifiers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the matchmaker in a second, because that affects some of this. But anyway, on the basis of these theses, the economy is adjusted algorithmically based on statistics. This is a fundamentally flawed way to do it. I have put up 2 videos already over the last year, one just a couple of days ago, explaining why this is a fundamentally flawed way to structure the in-game economy of a free-to-play online game. That is my economics degree talking. My economics background, my business degree talking. I could spend hours and hours talking about just this one point, why basing it on player statistics is fundamentally flawed. About once every couple of years, we revise it globally as new vehicles are added to the current trees, and the rest of the time to a lesser degree to correct the economy. Well, they're not correcting it, using accumulated statistics. Again, don't do this. You are doing it wrong. You are doing it exactly wrong. This is the wrong way to do it. Bad snail. The current progression and economy system is not the only possible system for game economy principles. This is correct. I agree with this sentence more than anything else in this entire article that they published. It is not the only possible system for game economy principles, and I would argue it's not the best. Anyway, for example, there are also, for example, systems based on randomness or on the exchange of virtual objects between players. Yeah, this is bad. Don't ever switch to exchange of virtual objects between players. My goodness. However, and I think with this, they set up a straw man. They picked something that would absolutely destroy the game and said, well, that's the only other option. We can't do that, as a way to justify the currently busted economy. And it does not, because there are 100 ways that they could structure this stuff. Anyway. However, without even considering the limitations on different platforms associated, any significant changes are unlikely to be well received. That is not true. If you make significant changes that are good, they are likely to be well received. Simple as that. After all, our community is formed of people who accept the current economy and progression in basic principles, or rather, they may even like it in general. I'm going to say almost nobody likes it. Like 1%, 0.5% of the player base likes the current economy and progression model. Very few. I'm going to reject the idea that the community is formed of people who accept the current economy and progression in basic principles. There's no evidence of that statement. And I would argue that even if you take this at face value, and it's 100% true, they are discounting the possibility that the community might be much larger if the economy and progression in basic principles were structured differently. So they are discounting the possibility that doing it differently would raise the player base. And just through, law of averages, raising the player base You're going to raise the percentage, the number of players in quantity and raw quantity, assuming the percentages stay the same. The number of players who are willing to monetize into the game will also increase. You broaden the base. That is how you do it. So it turns out that the main key parameters that we can change without significant harm to the game and players is the revision of the total time to reach the top and get the whole line with some of the smaller tweaks, blah, blah, blah. Again, I want to see them say publicly how long they think it's supposed to take to get from the bottom to the top. Until and unless they're willing to publish that number, all of their other justifications for the way that the current in-game economy is structured are superfluous. All right, they're basing like everything on this idea that there should be, some total time to reach the top and get the whole line. Like, I'm interpreting that through bad translation to say there should be, to max out a tech tree. All right. Well, how long do they think it's supposed to take? And how long is it actually taking? How long did it take you if you've maxed out one of the tech trees? If you haven't maxed out one of the tech trees, and let's say you've just gotten up to like your first jet fighter or your first tank with a vertically stabilized gun, how long did it take you to get there? Let's see if that matches up with how long they think it should take, and then let's have the rest of this discussion. But they're not going to ever publish that number, so yeah. And they're saying here that if they were to really revise the economy, it would take many weeks, and it would slow the. They said show the planned changes. That's got to be a typo. It would slow the changes in the second half of the summer. That's great. I would be more than happy if they came out with an update or two updates that were entirely focused on economic balancing, restructuring, and bug fixes. Like, that would be an amazing thing for the players. However, this is Tim with a business degree talking. That would not be an amazing thing for Gaijin as a company. It would be extremely difficult for middle management to justify spending developer resources purely on bug fixing and economic reworks without introducing new content and justify that to higher levels of management. It would be extremely hard for them to do that. And I get it. I work out in the business world. My day job career outside of YouTube and politics and everything else, I'm an IT guy. So I get it. I understand like software development, life cycle, and all that. That's a hard sell inside the company. So I'm not optimistic that it would actually happen, but it would be extremely good for the players. And I think most of us would be willing to hold off on content updates for a while, new vehicles, if it meant that some of these more structural problems were resolved. We are no doubt open to other suggestions, and we have many of our own, but we doubt a complete transformation of the progression into something completely new will be accepted by many players, no matter how much we would like it to do ourselves. Put an asterisk on this. We'll still try to come up with something new in the progression, and we'll definitely consider all of your suggestions. Guys, they've already done this. I mentioned that I've been playing War Thunder since the very beginning. The progression originally used a completely different model than it uses now. It used one metric of player experience to unlock new stuff. It had 20 ranks instead of 7 or 8, depending if you're talking about ground or air. The Silver Lions economy was completely different. They've already done this. They've already made a sweeping transformation of the progression into something completely new at least once so far. So there's absolutely no reason they can't do it again. And frankly, I think if they were to do this, it needs to be like a collaborative thing. They need to put out they need to pull the player base with more than 2 options. Don't ask us, do you want the arsenic or the hemlock? Choose the way in which you'd like to suffer. That shouldn't be the nature of the polling. they should poll the player base on like what priorities we'd like to see in the progression, what we would be willing to spend money on to keep the game going. You know, I mean, speaking me personally, I do not mind paying for a premium account like once a year. Some people might have strong objections to that. They might want all of their monetization into the game to be transactional, buying premium vehicles off the web store or something, you know. But they can't structure the economy in a fair way without really understanding what the players are actually willing to participate in. So that's a thought. And also, they really should take into account, sorry, I've been going for a long time. They also should take into account and spend some money to reach out to players who have left the game and find out why. Because I'm willing to bet the answer to that question could really inform how to fix some of the rest of these problems. Now, this whole thing bothers me from another level. This reads like they think that it's our fault that we just don't understand how it's supposed to work, that they haven't explained it well enough. Like even this first paragraph, dear players, blah, 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 allow us to explain it, thinking that if we just understand, then we'll be fine with it. No, Mr. Udinsev, we get it. And it's because we understand that we don't like it. So that's something to chew on. I'm going to close off with a thought, and this is why I mentioned my political background. They say separately a few words about review bombing as a method of communication, and I'm not going to read through this. I'm just going to leave you with a closing thought that I have firsthand experience with. When someone in a position of power asks you not to use a particular method of protest, it usually means that particular method of protest is extremely effective. If you are being asked not to do a sit-in and block a bridge across the river, it usually means that blocking that bridge is going to be an extremely effective method of protest, and it's going to really light a fire under some people to address whatever your concerns happen to be. So you can take from that whatever you will. I'm not going to come out and suggest that anyone do anything in particular. I'm not personally a fan of review bombing myself. I don't engage in it. But when they ask you to do something, when they ask you specifically not to do something, it usually means that that particular method is very effective. The only thing I would really encourage you to do is if they actually come out with any polls or anything like that, or if they set up some threads on the forums where they solicit specific comments, leave comments, keep it positive. Don't just tell them that they suck. Tell them what would make it better. You know, I mean, I'm just going to oversimplify. If you think that the only problem in the economy is that repair costs are too high, tell them that. Tell them that they should just slash repair costs by half, tweak nothing else, and they're fine. Tell them that. Don't say, oh, well, your whole thing sucks, and stop talking. You have to give them some action item that they can take back and add it into, you know, however they're going to keep track of like what people are suggesting. If they see that 80% of the people who play the game are all telling them the same thing, then they might actually be likely to think about doing that. You know, they did actually roll back those changes a few days ago. So, you know, they will clearly respond to community pressure. I'm of the opinion that when you're going to leave feedback, that's a very good thing to do. But keeping that feedback positive and giving them something that they can, like giving them an action item that they can fix rather than just telling them that they suck is probably, is probably a lot more of a constructive and positive way, you know, to contribute towards fixing these problems than just leaving a flaming bag of dog poop on their doorstep. But if they're telling you, for the love of Zeus, please don't leave the flaming bag of dog poop on the doorstep, probably means that that's an effective thing to do if you really want to get them to change something. So, and I realize I'm trying to sort of hedge my comments and not directly tell you guys to participate in any sort of like destructive boycott or something. But at the same time, if they don't want you to, there's probably a reason for that. So I've been talking for quite a while. I think it's been almost an hour here. And I apologize. If you've been a longtime viewer of the channel, I very rarely post content like this, maybe once a year at most. But when I read this first article, when I read this article for the first time, How Progression and Economy is Built in Free-to-Play Games, and War Thunder in particular, it offended me on like 20 different levels. Like, this read to me as if they think I'm just too stupid to understand that A, they have to make money, which is obvious, and B, I'm too stupid to understand why the way they're doing it is the only and best way, which it is not. I understand that they have to make money. I understand how and why they're doing it, and I just think there are better ways. Broaden the base, stop squeezing a tiny number of whales, and stop punishing people who cannot or do not want to be squeezed whales. I'll shut up. As always, thanks for watching.